Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friday roundup of the Relief Valve podcast. It's March 3rd, and let's jump right in here.
I told you, Li Mengyang was one of the first people to tell the truth in the United States at great personal cost. She was there. She joins us now. Doctor, thank you so much for coming on. You said 3 years ago that you believe that this virus was intentionally released by the government you once worked for, the government of China. Today we're hearing in this leak to the Wall Street Journal that it was accidental. Do you believe this leak was accidental or intentional?
Hi, Tucker. Thank you for having me again. First, I really want to appreciate you and also Fox News have been taking so much effort pursuing the truth of COVID origin. Without your help, there won't be such milestone achievement. And I want to tell, of course, it was not an accident. And maybe for people who don't have this kind of biosafety lab 3 or 4 experience on coronavirus, maybe it's easy for them to accept the accident lab leak. However, I'm the scientist working in such lab using coronavirus, and I can tell you, based on the protocol and also the other surveillance system, it will be impossible for the lab leak accidentally happen in such lab and cause the Wuhan outbreak and also the pandemic. So definitely, now we just reached to the first step. It was from China's lab, and we need to pursue the truth of origin, and we need to keep going on.
We know the Chinese government allowed its infected citizens to travel in huge groups to Western Europe in the early days of the pandemic. That was intentional. But you believe the whole thing. They came up with this virus and they unleashed it on the world to destroy the Western economies and to elevate their own position globally.
I want to emphasize one thing is, I would say based on the evidence and the source I have, that the virus was intentionally brought out of this strict lab and released in the community. However, I don't think the outbreak in Wuhan was intentional. I would say it was because CCP government and military scientists underestimate the transmissibility. That's why finally it got out of control and caused the local outbreak. However, we should know that CCP government intentionally to let it go all over the world to kill millions of people all over the world later.
We just have to hope and pray that you will be interviewed by many other journalists in this country over the coming weeks. Now that this has been confirmed, you're an eyewitness to it. You have a, I think, incredible story to tell, and I really hope you're no longer ignored. I appreciate you coming on again tonight. Li Mengyang, thank you so much.
So that's Dr. Li Mengyang, and she escaped from China to come to America and talk about what the Chinese government has been doing, including she's a scientist herself, and she was aware of some of this that was happening. I don't know if she was directly at the lab. I can't remember her interview. She might have even been on Joe Rogan at one point, but she was interviewed by somebody in a pretty lengthy interview, and talking about the things that the Chinese government does on willingly on a regular basis. And she was talking about them doing this. So what she's saying in the interview, just in case it was a little hard to understand, because she's doing her best to speak English as a second language and relay everything that she wants to say. But she's saying that it was being created in the lab in Wuhan, and they didn't mean for it to get out, and then it got out. But it got out anyway, and then they rolled with it to see, well, now that it's here, let's see what this thing can do. And they allowed it to spread and just kind of sat back and watched allegedly watch the outcome of letting it out. So for everybody that's a little late getting to the party, you've been one of those leftist idiots who didn't think that it came from Wuhan. You thought that a bat and a guy made out or something, and that's how we got it. And the rest of us have been at the party, and we've already known this all along. So the virus came from Wuhan. It's not xenophobic or racist to say that the Chinese government did it. They did it. And, of course, as I said in a previous show, all of this has to come out in black and white and be shoved in everybody's faces, or a lot of people's faces, before they go, oh my God, did you know that it came from the Wuhan? Yeah, we fucking know for a long time, because we use our brains And we use, deductive reasoning, and we figured out that these things exist before we had to have the information shoved in our face in black and white ink. So for everybody else joining the party, and you're a little late to it because you wanted the investigations to happen, you wanted them to flesh the whole thing out just to be 100% sure. All of the information is finally coming out now. The FBI and the Department of Energy are all releasing reports at this point. And we're going to get into it right here, seeing likely emerge from leak at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So two U.S. agencies, the FBI and the Department of Energy, now agree that the COVID-19 likely emerged from a leak at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, since the Energy Department's assessment is based on new information, or information they finally decided to give to the public, which will be shared. Other official groups will presumably arrive at the same conclusion. Suppose that a year from now, U.S. intel agencies agree that the Chinese government created COVID-19 in a laboratory, lied about it, and withheld information that allowed the deadly virus to run riot across the globe. What should President Biden do? How should China be held accountable for nearly 7 million deaths worldwide and untold economic destruction? China must pay a price. Biden will have to assemble a coalition of countries finally willing to push back against China's carelessness and deception about COVID-19, as well as its ongoing theft of intellectual property, disregard for human rights, dishonest posturing about climate change, and economic coercion. It is time for over a decade for the free world, enthralled to the economic opportunities of a growing China, has looked the other way as Beijing has allowed rampant cyber attacks, stolen billions of dollars in patents and know-how, and lied about its military ambitions in the South China Sea, elsewhere, and cheated on international rules and standards. Despite being a member of the World Trade Organization, which prohibits such activities, China routinely pushes other countries for what they view as hostile measures by blackballing imports of our nation's goods. For instance, when officials in Canberra barred Huawei and ZTE from its 5G network and demanded a strenuous investigation into the origins of COVID-19, China retaliated by banning imports of Australian coal, beef, copper, wine, lobsters, beer, and other key goods. Such moves are meant to weaken antagonistic countries. Both sides can play that game. The U.S. and its allies could similarly target and ban goods from China that can be bought elsewhere, which would not only punish Beijing's interests but also accelerate the exodus of manufacturers from China. The same coalition could also demand that China be booted from the World Trade Organization and the World Health Organization. Yes, globalists would squeal, but China does not abide by the rules of these organizations. Instead, Beijing has manipulated them for its own interests. As a member of the WHO, China should have immediately shared valuable information about COVID-19 that might have accelerated the development of therapeutics and a vaccine. It also should have allowed a thorough and timely investigation of the pandemic's origins. It did neither. So you remember when they were talking about when it was during like the Chinese New Year, people got infected then because a lot of the Chinese, they go back home to the provinces that they grew up in to celebrate the holiday from multiple countries. And then when they're done and the holiday is over, they get back on planes and they travel back again to the countries that they live in. And I know it's crude to say that they were essentially treated like plague rats, but that's kind of what it appears, allegedly, to be that the Chinese did with these people. They allowed them to be affected when they came to China, and then leave, go back to their new respective countries, and then allow this virus to spread all over the world. And then there was even discussion about when there was knowledge of this, right? Because my original Facebook is gone now. Zuckerpuke had it deleted for like no reason. But I had posted in January of 2020, because I was listening to Alex Jones at the time, and he was talking about getting reports of it from China. And I said in January, COVID's either on its way or it's already here. Be aware, take your precautions, learn about what this is going on, because none of us had any real information about what this thing was and what it could do. And just be aware. And I don't have the proof of that anymore because they wiped my Facebook out. And then other reports said that it was here even sooner. That they were aware of it in it was like November of 19, something like that. I think that it was out there. The researcher or the junior researcher had left their shift for the day. They had been exposed by it. They went to go see their partner or go live their life and do their thing, and it started spreading from that point. And then when the Chinese started getting information about that, they didn't bother to look into it. So, the Chinese are responsible for the deaths of thousands, if millions. If any of this is completely accurate, right? I'm on YouTube, so I have to be careful about some things. All this is coming out now. So, a year ago, if you tried to say the virus came from Wuhan, your account would be struck. You'd be banned or deleted off social media. You couldn't talk about this, right? They did the same thing with Hunter Biden's laptop. They did the same thing with a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, you still can't currently have a candid discussion about the COVID-19 vaccine, right? You have to, you can only go by information that the shitbag sellout doctors are willing to sign off on. That's the only information that you can put out there. Other than that, you can't really talk about anything else that could be related with those. So, and eventually we're going to get there, right? And here's the problem with that is, our benevolent overlords allowed us to have the discussion about these topics. Well, in the meantime, a lot of people suffered and died because you're not allowed to talk about this issue. And every single one of them that did that should be complicit in how these people have been hurt. These shitbags at YouTube that shut down freedom of speech and the freedom to have a discussion about these issues. They should be held responsible for people who have been hurt in these situations. That you couldn't talk about that it was from Wuhan. That you couldn't talk about Hunter Biden's laptop at this point. That you can't have a candid discussion about vaccines. That's information that can't get disseminated to the people. So the only information you end up getting is some shitbag who believes it because they've been paid to believe it. Or they've been sucked into the narrative. I know in the Senate is having more discussions about the COVID-19 and everything now, and then there's information coming out. I don't know if it's in one of the articles I saved here, but there's information coming out saying that there were doctors who originally were against the vaccine. They were not. They didn't recommend for it to be used, and then after receiving very large payouts, allegedly, they changed their tune and were willing to sign off that it was good to go. It was all set, and so people's allegiances were bought for these situations, and that hurts people. It's wrong. And at some point, if there's any real justice in the world at all, these organizations and these doctors need to be held responsible for being complicit in these things. But let's continue on. China should also be dropped from the G20, which describes itself as the premier forum for international economic cooperation. China does not cooperate on economic or financial issues, but only serves its own political and financial ambitions. For instance, its antagonism to the West was on full display recently, as it was one of the few holdouts on a resolution condemning Vladimir Putin's war on Ukraine. Isolation would be a blow to the country's prestige, which matters to Beijing. There would be a price to isolating China and barring imports of select Chinese goods. Consumers would bear some increased costs up front over time. However, the shifting of commerce away from China would provide economic and security benefits. Remember that during the pandemic, when the Chinese authorities became aware that PPE items like masks and essential goods like test kits were becoming scarce, they hoarded supplies made by U.S. firms under phony export rules, keeping them for their own citizens. The U.S. made a lot of noise about home sourcing medicines and other critical goods. When COVID revealed our dependence on China for such goods, it is time to take such measures. For sure, assembling such a coalition would be extremely difficult. Corporate interests in countries like Germany and indeed in the US would howl. However, a sufficient number of compliant countries joined, as happened in the fight against Russia, others would be shamed into participating. Voters in Western countries may demand a strong response. After all, evidence has been building for almost 3 years that the virus probably escaped from the Wuhan lab, which was known to be conducting experiments on similar kinds of coronaviruses, which had been cited in prior years as failing to take adequate safety precautions. In May 2020, the highly regarded Z Division, or intelligence arm of the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, issued a classified report suggesting that a lab leak was a real possibility. When a team led by the World Health Organization visited Wuhan in early 21, the Chinese blocked the investigation. The international group of researchers were not allowed to speak to the people working at the WIV and were only briefly permitted inside the facility. The government also refused to share with the investigators any data on experiment safety records or any other pertinent information about the operations of the lab. The WHO basically caved to China's argument that the lab was not responsible. Nonetheless, the Danish scientists who led the WHO team suggested months later that the possibility of a lab accident merited further investigation, to which the Chinese never agreed. Chinese officials have steadfastly denied that the virus escaped from the WIV, including in recent days, objecting to the new report from the Department of Energy. Of course they are. In the past 3 years, they even attempted to convince the world that COVID-19 came from outside China, but entered the country through frozen food imports. They also pointed fingers at the U.S. military. The world is unconvinced. No one has ever accused China of intentionally unleashing COVID-19 around the world. The leak, nearly everyone agrees, was likely an accident, but the evidence will likely show that China almost certainly perpetrated an unforgivable, costly, and deadly act against the world and lied about it, and are we prepared to punish them for it? I'd say with Dementia Joe in office, who is owned by Ukraine and is owned by China, and his son is owned by them, I would say no, he's not prepared to take that action. He might be pushed into it, and having no choice but to do it. But our dementia-ridden idiot of a president is absolutely a criminal. He's absolutely corrupt. He's absolutely bought out by other countries and other entities, and he cannot be trusted at all. I mean, he's definitely a puppet being manipulated by others. So the question is, what definitively, who are the others? But we're too much in bed with China to make it simple enough to just go after them and take the action that we should. That's why when Biden and his corrupt regime did their investigation of China and the lab leak, their information was, we don't think it was them, or we don't think it was an intentional lab leak, and they came up with some bullshit information that we all knew was a lie because they wanted to just let it go. And just go, well, you know what, it happened, and now this is our new life, this is our new normal, and we just have to deal with it. And we're not going to hold anyone responsible for something like this. Now, additional information is coming out because they can't keep the lid on the pot anymore that's saying that, yes, this absolutely came from Wuhan, and now we can't simply ignore it, and some sort of action needs to be taken. And in my opinion, this is happening for a reason, right? Because relations are breaking down with China. There's more military movement and actions happening in the Taiwanese Strait. American ships are there, and we have flights going through there regularly. And China is shadowing our aircraft now. I have a story about that, and I'm gonna bring that up shortly. So as more comes out, and then it becomes less of a deal. It's like if the relationship is already going to shit. What does it matter at that point if you take a hammer to it? And this is where it's going now, and the reason, in my opinion, that I think that more of the Wuhan lab information is coming out, because they're just going to take a hammer to what's left of the relationship between America and China and just shatter it at this point. So now it's safe to release all of this information because it doesn't really matter now if it comes out and it makes relations worse and it pushes for more things to happen. So that's why I think we're finally getting the truth that we've already known all along is coming out. So this was interesting that came out here, and it was yesterday. It came on my a news update. The entire Senate, Democrats and Republicans alike, unanimously passes a COVID leak declassification bill. The Senate voted unanimously on Wednesday to force the declassification of any links between the COVID-19 pandemic and Chinese virology lab, following reports that the two U.S. agencies view a laboratory leak as the most likely source of the virus. Introduced by Senator Josh Hawley, the bill would mandate the disclosure of any U.S. intelligence linking a sensitive laboratory near where the virus was first reported, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, to the origin of the virus, according to the bill's text. It comes as two agencies acknowledge a lab leak rather than animal-to-human transmission as the virus' most likely source, sparking renewed questioning of its origins 3 years after it became a pandemic that killed more than 1 million Americans. Over the weekend, news emerged that the Energy Department had come to a low confidence. We're not sure, but we're sort of kind of definitely sure. Low confidence conclusion that the virus most likely leaked from a Chinese lab. Within days, FBI Director Christopher Wray said the Bureau has viewed a Wuhan lab leak as the most likely origin for quite some time now. The new Senate bill will require Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines to declassify any knowledge of work done at the Wuhan lab associated with the Chinese military, as well as its coronavirus research and related activities prior to the pandemic. It would also require detailed information on researchers at the Wuhan lab who fell ill in autumn of 2019. You remember I said that earlier in the show, including their name and whether they were exposed to coronavirus research. There are reports of COVID-like illness among several Wuhan researchers in the months prior to the pandemic, according to a State Department fact sheet. The bill, known as COVID-19 Origins Act of 2023, would also need to pass the House of Representatives, where Republicans have a slight majority, before President Dementia Joe could sign it into law. And he won't sign it into law. He may face scrutiny over that, but I don't think he'll sign it. He can't, because him and Hunty are in bed with China, so he just opens himself up to more problems with China. The chair of the House of Democratic Caucus, California Rep. Pete Aguilar, signaled on Wednesday that he did not favor forcing declassification, telling reporters, "We believe in letting committees of jurisdiction guide the discussions ahead and working with the administration," Bloomberg reported. The bill passed the Senate by unanimous consent, meaning there were no objections and no roll call. A similar bill with the same name unanimously passed the Senate in 21. Its companion bill in the House of Representatives died in the subcommittee after being introduced by Representative Mike Gallagher, a Republican from Wisconsin. That's because the Democrats didn't want that information out either, because it would totally destroy their narrative, right? During the height of the pandemic, or the beginnings of the pandemic, you had Nancy Pelosi out in Chinatown saying, "Come to the festivities of the New Year and then the Lunar New Year and all that. Don't let Trump's xenophobia and racism get in the way of you coming in and having a good time. Don't be racist against the Chinese people." And then come to find out that this was out there, it was spreading between people, and these idiots were telling everybody to go hang out in large groups and do their thing, and that you were xenophobic for saying that it came from China. And no one is saying that they hate the Chinese people. No, I'm not saying that. I wouldn't suggest anybody else says it. It's the Communist Party in China that are our enemy and that we hate, right? Like, we're not angry at the Russian people. We're angry at the Russian government. We with the corruption in the Ukraine government. We don't like Zelensky, but we're fine with the Ukrainian people. They shouldn't have to suffer, right? The people shouldn't have to suffer. It's these tyrannical governments that are the enemy, just like Biden's corrupt regime is our enemy here in America. So some studies continue to indicate that the virus jumped from animals to humans at a Wuhan seafood market, as reported by CNN. U.S. intelligence agencies are split in the issue, but agree that the virus was not deliberately unleashed by China, according to a 2021 DNY report. So interesting that they're coming out and demanding all of that. So let's see here. The other part here is that I told you about earlier in the show is Chinese fighter jet shadows U.S. aircraft over the South China Sea. A Chinese J-11 jet fighter armed with 4 air-to-air missiles appeared to the rear of an American P-8 patrol aircraft, passed above and settled a few hundred feet from the wing of the U.S. Navy plane. Is that it? Is that all you got for me? You don't have more of the story? Okay, so it's either not loading or they don't have more information from it, or why. I don't know why. Why can't I X out of these stupid fucking ads? And, remove the ad? Fuck everything off here. No, I can just get another shit ad. So, you know, it shows you aggressions increasing, China becoming angrier. Like they got angry that we outed them over the spy balloon that was coming out. They didn't want that talked about and put in front of everybody because it was embarrassing to them, and they were trying to keep it on the down low, and it didn't happen this way. Now, the virus from the Wuhan is even bigger because it infected the entire world, which means the entire world can be against them at this point, and that's bad news for them too. So they don't want this coming out. They've been trying to suppress it as long as they can, and this is going to lead to more escalation on the Indo-Pacific as well with China. So we're going to see where that's going to go. It's going to turn into more problems. See what we're going to do. We'll leave these other stories to the end and stay on the increased escalations front here. So this is Luke from wearechange.org. I really like this guy. He's a good guy, and he really has all the conspiracy theories that are true. And he even has a video where he and a couple buddies went to Epstein's Island. They actually took a boat there, got out on the island, were taking video of it and looking at some of the infamous stuff you heard about in court documents. And they ended up kind of having to run when security showed up because there's still some sort of security guarding the island for whatever the reason is. But a good guy with a lot of information. And he was on Timcast IRL at one point as a regular guest that would help host the show, and he ended up leaving to Florida, and he's running his own thing right now. So, you know, I like to give props where they're due. If I use someone's video or I get information from somewhere else, I like to give that person props for that, and he does too from his stuff that I watched. So I really like him. I go to him to see kind of information as well. We Are Change right here. Find him online. It's really interesting stuff. He's worth a follow. So on the Russian-Ukrainian front now, new information is coming out that the Ukraine is running ops into Russia. And they hit like $1 billion spy plane. If they didn't blow it up entirely, they sabotaged it and damaged it pretty good. And have even making runs into Russian territory now, escalating this conflict, right? So we're pumping them full of a whole bunch of money to their corrupt leader Zelensky, helping them, and the entire mindset of all of these other countries helping Ukraine is to help them defend their land from an incursion from Russia. They're turning around and taking the resources that are being given to them to not only help them keep fighting, but take the fight into Russia, not to move the front to Russia and put the war in Russia. This is just escalatory actions that they're doing that are going to make things worse. Ukraine's barely holding on in Ukraine. And there's some new updates where they're now taking some losses again and losing some territory. But there's no way that you can take where you're currently at, take that front line, move it into the heart of Russia and fight there in Russia. So the attacks don't make any sense at all, other than to aggravate and to hurt them. It's just bee stings that you're throwing at Russia. While they're attacking you, while all of us are helping you defend yourself, and you're using that opportunity to be even more assholes over there. So it's a recipe for a real bad situation. I mean, it just shows you that Ukraine is just, and Zelensky are just as much assholes as Russia is. They should be focusing on defending their borders, not leaving the borders to fight Russia. They should fight in pushing Russia back. So here's Luke here, and he's got some more information about what's going on.
All of this is, of course, we're still not done here, as there's a lot of global instability, specifically because, of a global proxy conflict between the East and the West that has now elevated itself to a completely new level with new attacks that are happening inside of Russia. The Russian government is calling this a terrorist attack that's happening within its territory. This as Ukrainian saboteurs are alleged of crossing into into the Russian territory and taking hostages within Russia, within the village of Lupinchenya, as there was even videos of allegedly this incident that are now circling around social media. The Russian government has responded to all of this, saying that this is, of course, a deliberate provocation that will escalate this conflict. This, as this Ukrainian saboteur group is also accused of firing on civilians. This, as the
So it says, Kyiv says Moscow's claims of a Ukrainian attack within Russia are a deliberate provocation. False flag accusations as Putin claims terrorists fired at civilians during an incursion. So there's been this Ukrainian Special Forces group, whatever it is. It's gone into Russia, taken hostages, gotten into a firefight inside of Russia. And this is just more escalation by Ukraine, while Ukraine turns around to the rest of the world and says, woe is us, we're in trouble here, please help us. I mean, it's not great for your people who are fighting to survive and stay safe and keep their families safe, that you, while you're doing all this fighting in Ukraine, you send a couple other guys over to Russia to kick them in the nuts and piss them off and get them going more than they already are.
Ukrainian government is responding to all of this by just saying that, quote, Russia is trying to justify an escalation in its war, when in reality, Ukrainian forces and saboteurs being in Russia definitely does escalate the situation. This, as the Ukrainian government has previously launched attacks into Ukrainian territory. There was even a recent attack on a $300 million Russian spy plane within Belarus. There was an attack on the Crimea Bridge and many similar drone attacks, but it does seem like this is the first kind of attack with Ukrainian military members going into Russian territory, with some people speculating that this is a potential for a major false flag. Now, with all of this happening, how will Russia respond? Well, only time will tell. This, as Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has announced that his plan is to take back Crimea, something that, of course, many military strategists said is going to be very unlikely, very risky, and, of course, very difficult, if not impossible, under the current circumstances, as the Ukrainians are losing a lot of forces, and it looks like the city of Bakhmut is almost completely surrounded now, as even a few weeks ago, we were telling you, it's not looking good for the Ukrainians in Bakhmut, and our analysis has been correct. This, as the city there is almost completely surrounded, as the Ukrainians have been sending many of their military units there, as some on the ground are even reporting that the average lifespan of a new soldier on the front lines is around 4 hours. This, as this conflict has been extremely bloody, extremely detrimental to everyone, and even the slightest criticisms of it has put mainline NBC journalists on Ukrainian hit lists. Yes, you heard that correctly. NBC News journalist Kirill Simmons, who is in Crimea right now, just put out a report that was titled "A View from Crimea, the Russian annexed territory Ukraine is hoping to seize back," and he reported, as he saw things, that most Crimeans are pro-Russian. This, as of course the previous Ukrainian people there were kicked out of that territory, and the ones who stayed and the ones who moved in are predominantly pro-Russian, obviously. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, but to put this journalist on the hit list for reporting things as he saw them, especially since the journalist is from the country that is financing this entire conflict, should be something that should be questioned further. This, as the United States and Russia are preparing for a major showdown at the G20, where the U.S. Secretary of State is telling Russia to stay in a nuclear treaty that the Russians probably will not be staying in at all, as of course the United States has their interest, Russia has their own interest. This, as tensions between these two countries have recently been at an all-time high, as of course the relationship there hasn't been a good one. And there are estimates of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, innocent human beings that have been sent off by politicians that have died during this entire conflict. One too many, in my opinion, and whether they're Ukrainians or Russians, I think this whole thing is absolutely nonsensical. I think this whole thing doesn't serve any kind of larger logistical purpose. There is no strategy here. There is no goal here. Nothing has been explained.
So U.S. and NATO are risking a catastrophic clash of nuclear weapons with their involvement in the Ukraine war, Russia claims. And I know on an episode of Timcast IRL, he was kind of being facetious, but he was like, just if you're going to fire the nukes or you're going to use them, just frickin' get it over with, right? I'm tired of hearing about the threats and the back and forth. Well, if you cross this line, you cross that line. We're getting a little tired of it. You cross this line, it's fucking on like Donkey Kong. And I know he's being facetious, but it's like I get to this point with some of this shit, and it's like, yeah, you're all threatening that you're going to do one thing or another. Like, fucking do it or don't do it. Just either bring it to a close or fucking escalate it to full scale war. Like, do something. I'm tired of paying all my bills. Just fucking do it now, so I don't have another bill in the mail. At least do something, or don't do it. Shut the fuck up and stop threatening over all of this shit. So that's Luke at We Are Change. Let's see. I don't know if he has anything else.
We should be doing almost everything in our power. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, so there's that. This is a story. Transition Day. This is a story for another day. So I'm looking to do that. There's one more that kind of popped up. So we've got I already did the YouTube portion of this, but I wanted to do just a follow up with the audio for all the audio listeners too. Is Chicago oust embattled Mayor Beetlejuice there, Lori Lightfoot, as the race heads to a runoff without her. So no candidate was able to reach the 50% vote threshold to be elected. They do like the America's Got Talent voting system, which I think is fucking stupid. Whatever. It's almost like a popularity contest. There's several people in. Everyone have to get a certain percentage of vote. If you can get over a certain amount, you're automatically a shoo-in. And if you can't, it goes to this runoff, which is another, so the popularity contest eliminates the other people, and then there's like two left, and then there's your vote after that. It's a stupid thing. I don't know why people do it. But Democratic Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot has lost her bid for re-election as the race heads to runoff without her after no candidate reached the required 50% vote threshold to be elected. Lightfoot faced challenges from 8 other candidates in the race, including Chicago Public Schools CEO and City Budget Director Paul Vallas, who held a significant double-digit lead in the polls ahead of Election Day. Leading up to the election, Lightfoot also narrowly trailed Brandon Johnson, a member of the Cook County Board of Commissioners, by 2 points, and was in a dead heat with the Democratic Rep. Jesus Choi Garcia, who represents Illinois' 4th Congressional District. Vallas received enough votes to head to the runoff and will face Brandon Johnson on April 4th. So you got Vallas here with 33% of the vote, Brandon Johnson with 20% of the vote, and then Lori Lightfoot in 3rd place with 17% of the vote. And I just said, despite her utter failures and the absolute, you couldn't pay me to go to Chicago, just the absolute violence in Chicago, and 88,000 morons thought that she was doing a good job and should have the opportunity to keep being mayor. And what bothers me is the amount of stupid people that we're surrounded by in this country, that we share this country with and have the ability to vote. And it's people like that are fucking you over, right? For all of the innocent people in Chicago who are victims of all of this violence, there's 88,000 morons in Chicago who think that the violence and the douchebaggery should continue. It's crazy. Now, Chicago is a blue leftist shithole, so any one of these guys is going to be, if Paul Vallas, he's a white guy, Brandon Johnson is a black guy. If Paul Vallas wins, or Vallas, whatever, wins, I mean, I'm sure he's still a lefty, but he's got the support of the policemen's unions, and he's saying he's going to be hard on crime. But then again, Eric Adams in New York said he was a former cop who was going to be hard on crime, and the guy's just a left-wing shitbag, corrupt shitbag who isn't doing shit to help New York. So saying you're for the police and you're going to do what needs to be done is great sentiment. That doesn't mean that something is actually going to happen. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm just happy that Mayor Beetlejuice got kicked out, and of course she's blaming this on racism and bigotry because she's a black woman who's lesbian. That's what some of the newest things she's saying when she's been interviewed about her loss. So there you go. There's the left eating the left as always. If she's doing a god-awful job in getting you and your family killed, that's besides the point. Don't be racist against her or biased against her because she's black and lesbian. So it's just these people that the left-wing idiots bring into positions of importance and responsibility that are absolutely, completely unqualified for the job, but they get in because they're a diversity hire, and that's just harmful to everyone. All right, so we had another new Norfolk train crash. Let's see where we're at, 40 minutes. Another new Norfolk Southern train accident in North Carolina. A Norfolk Southern train came off the tracks in North Carolina over the weekend, less than a month after a derailment by the same company triggered ongoing fears of contamination in Ohio. The company said that the two front wheels on one of the 132 cars on a freight train came off the tracks in Lexington, North Carolina on Saturday, but the car stayed upright. WFMY reported. Officials reported no hazmat situation, injuries to crew, or other danger to the public. While this was technically a single-car derailment, it was only one set of the car's trucks. The car itself is upright, not completely off the tracks. We are making repairs and setting the wheels back on the track and sending the train on its way, a Norfolk Southern spokesperson said, according to WITN. The cause of the incident was not immediately clear. Amtrak tweeted on Saturday that two of its regional Piedmont trains, number 74 and 75, were delayed due to a disabled freight train blocking the tracks. The latest Norfolk Southern mishap comes weeks after a large derailment and subsequent chemical release near East Palestine, Ohio. Dozens of Norfolk Southern cars derailed there on February 3rd, and days later, chemicals in several cars were deliberately burned in a huge smoke plume, triggering fears of air and water contamination. Since then, other train derailments have made headlines. A train carrying hazardous materials went off the tracks in Michigan. Hazmat responded to the derailment of dozens of cars in Nebraska, and there have been at least two other derailments in Splendora, Texas, and Enoree, South Carolina. Derailments are the most common type of train accidents. Why? As opposed to a fucking in-air accident? And occurred an average of 1,705 times a year between 1990 and 2021, according to federal data. In the past 10 years, about 10 to 20 train derailments a year have involved the release of hazardous materials. Alan Zabrinsky, director of the Railway Engineering and Safety Program at University of Delaware, told the Poyntier Institute. And I did a story about how Pete Buttigieg went to go judge the booties of everyone doing the cleanup. And he showed up a day late and $1 short because Trump was already there bringing water and supplies and food for firefighters and people that were working there. And then Buttigieg showed up to do his bullshit. And he was shot down pretty harshly by everyone. So, okay. There's one thing here has kind of popped up for me. And I want to find the short version of this here. I know this is the whole 2-hour show, and I don't want that whole thing. I just want the clip. So here we go. This is 13 minutes. So
estrogen is killing men. The next
fuck off. So to kind of set this up a little bit. I did a story earlier, last week I think, or earlier in the week, that John Fetterman went into the hospital for depression and some other symptoms, lightheadedness and some other bullshit, right? Now there's more information coming out that his wife is not by his side. She's fucked off with the kids and went to Canada or something. Wherever she's an immigrant and a political hack that's probably had her hand up his ass for this entire run for the big dummies office. But I don't know why the fuck is my. Hold on 1 second here. So that he's been hospitalized. Now I just saw this. This popped up for me this morning. We're going to try and go over a little bit of this. I'm going to roll everything else over to Monday for after the weekend. But we're going to finish with this. And I just saw this pop up, and I wanted to see, because now here's a potential that Fetterman rumored to be brain dead, and wife and kids flee the country. So let's see a little bit of what Tim Pool has to say on this.
This first story. We got some post money. John Fetterman co-sponsors Senate bill despite being institutionalized since February 15th. Fetterman's office has not said who is co-sponsoring legislation with his name on it while he remains institutionalized. A senior aide revealed that Fetterman would be hospitalized.
And it could be the wife, because there were jokes that she was she's a real left-wing political nut job activist. And, people were jokingly saying, well, when he goes fucking brain dead, it's going to be his wife who's the one sitting in the Senate seat calling all the shots. So while he's in the hospital, potentially mentally disabled completely, he's passing bills or legislation from the hospital. That's very odd. And now she's fled the country because that's obviously illegal. You can't do that.
For up to 2 months. So it's clearly not him. I guess that's the important point, is they're saying he's co-sponsoring this bill, but it's probably just a member of his staff. And I got to show you this right here from Twitter, or from John Cardillo on Twitter. He says, this is from February 25th, this was a while ago. Being told that Fetterman is essentially brain dead, let me start over. Being told that Fetterman is essentially brain dead, and it's being hidden because keeping him in office until August 18th avoids a special election which Republicans would most certainly win. This must be investigated. So here's the best part about this tweet. There's the context gets added to it. And it says, readers added context they thought people might want to know. The August 18th date has no significance. If a senator from Pennsylvania passes away, a replacement appointed by the governor will serve until the next special election. Oh, thank you for the fact-check Twitter. No fact-check on whether or not Fetterman's brain dead or not. That one they did. So that's, I saw that and I was like, okay. A bunch of users said, no, there won't be a special election. He's probably brain dead, but they'll just, replace the 18th date doesn't matter. They'll just replace him or something. So is Fetterman brain dead?
They're not debating the brain dead part.
Right, that's what I thought was funny. I'm like, you think
he was brain dead before he went to the hospital.
John Fetterman is effectively brain dead. He was institutionalized with depression.
I mean, that's not really a medical term, is it?
Brain dead?
I mean,
it might be.
I don't know. And is this like a cover-up of a suicide attempt?
No.
Struggling with depression?
The depression's probably fake.
I feel like that's the fake part.
Yeah, he's probably in the hospital because his brain doesn't work.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when he got admitted into the hospital after the Democratic retreat, or whether they're, wherever they are, sucking each other off and talking about how we can make the whole world trans. He got put from this retreat, put into the hospital for having lightheadedness and then having depression. What are you having all that for? You just won your election. You're about to become a big dummy senator for Pennsylvania. You're on the up and up, and your wife's got her activist hand up your ass and running the puppet show. What's not to be happy about, right? So I thought that, as they always do, anything that happens with someone, if there's possible for them to put a American Military News is even saying Fetterman co-sponsoring bills while he's hospitalized. So he's functional enough from a hospital bed to be co-sponsoring bills, or was his wife doing this, and this is the reason she's fled the country and went to Canada with the children? Why would you leave your husband? Who would it be by their partner's side while they're going through a difficult time? Why would you leave and go to another country and just be like, well, get better, I'll video chat? She should be by his side throughout this entire recovery. It just seems very odd. So what is going on here? Was she the one just, signing all this stuff when it gets brought into him? He's a fucking vegetable. And she's like, okay, fucking sounds good to me, sign it all. And then they're like, we got an update. He's fucking brain dead. And she's like, see ya! I'm fucking out of this shithole. And she goes to the communist country of Canada.
Brain death is a thing. It's permanent, irreversible, and complete loss of brain function.
Except for the brain stem, right?
I don't know. The part that controls breathing or whatever.
But they do say it's irreversible, so let me be hyperbolic in this situation.
We'll do an informal poll of the audience. We'll ask the audience, what is more likely, knowing Fetterman's health and medical history, that he is depressed after winning his dream election and checked himself into a hospital where he'll be for 2 months, or the man who suffered a stroke not that long ago and still can't understand words had some kind of recurring health issue that has injured his brain further.
I think that depression.
Put a 1 in the chat if you think he's just depressed, and 2 if you think he's brain dead.
I think the Democrat Party is the worst senior care home I've ever seen. I mean, between Fetterman and Biden,
Yeah.
they cannot find out. I mean, they never know where
100%.
these guys are. How do we not know where John Fetterman is?
I don't know.
How do we not know if he's brain dead?
Well, I always roll my eyes a little bit at stuff like this. It is convenient for conservatives on the right to be able to say he's brain dead because the dude's basically not around. So in the world of politics, this is, I don't know, par for the course. Guy goes to the hospital, immediately come out with some salacious rumor that's going to shock and damage the perception of this party. But I'm kind of like, of all the rumors they could have, the dude who had a stroke not that long ago who can't understand words, suffering another stroke is completely plausible, because we talked about this before. People who suffer strokes are at risk for suffering them again, and then all of a sudden dude's in the hospital for several weeks, and get this, his wife is gone. Giselle Fetterman, children, take a trip to Canada in wake of Senator's hospitalizations.
She's really a frightful looking woman. That's what gets me, even if
look at
he's
that
not
picture.
brain dead,
For
right?
our video listeners, there's her posing in front of an American flag. What a fucking
hospitalized
disgrace.
because they're so
Like you
depressed.
care about this country. You
Do
want
you
to tear it
flee the
apart.
country?
I think people were ragging on her. And a lot of, like on Twitter, they're like, stop making fun of Fetterman's wife, you're bad people. And it's like, dude, her husband's depressed and in the hospital for weeks, and she just went on vacation with her kids. That is like, that's worse than what Ted Cruz did. Like, with Ted Cruz, he went on vacation during an ice storm, and it's like, well, he was with his family, though. You know, so at the very least, he cares about his family. This is like the senator's wife, whose husband is a senator, not only fleeing the state, but also fleeing.
And what he's referencing there is when Senator Cruz, during the really bad snowstorms and ice storms that Texas got that were taking out the power grid, he already had, as I understood it, a scheduled trip to Cancun or something, I think, with his family. So his family had already left. They had already flown there without him. And then he stayed dealing with what he could to help in Texas to the best of his ability as a senator, right? I mean, do you want the guy to grab a shovel and start digging out fucking people's homes by yourself with a crew or something? Like, so he did what his family went on ahead. He did what he could, and then he ended up going to the airport and leaving for the trip as well. And then, you know, emergency services and everything were handling everything else. And Cruz was shit on for leaving the state and going on this pre-planned vacation. But you see Democratic shitbags like Biden has still not gone to Ohio to look at the train wreck. The train wreck is 3 weeks old at this point. He couldn't even be fucking bothered to show up because a lot of these people are Trump voters. So who cares? He's not wanted there. He doesn't care about these people, even though he claims he's Mr. Unity. So he doesn't give a shit about going. He's not Mr. Unity. He doesn't care about this country. He's not going to show up. And then you got Fetterman's shitbag activist wife, who goes, sorry to see you in the hospital. Me and the kids will be in Canada if you need anything. And she fucks off and goes to Canada. And who knows if any of these rumors, right, are legitimate. And he has had another stroke. He's brain dead. She's signing shit under his name. And she's fucked off to get out of Dodge.
Her husband, who is, you know, convalesced. That's dark.
If he's just depressed, then what is the reason to hospitalize unless they think that he's a danger to himself?
I guess he checked himself.
And if you're depressed, that's the last, like a hospital's the last place you should be. And they would just ship you off to a long-term medical facility. It's not a hospital. This guy's a cucumber. He's a cucumber. It just doesn't add up to me. Don't they assign him this authoritarian-looking schoolteacher woman?
Everybody thought Ruth Bader Ginsburg died that one time. They're like, where is she? She's dead. And then she pops up a few months later like, I'm still here. And, you know. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Fetterman, you know, pops up later. Because you can't, if someone really was brain dead, then they can't keep that covered up forever. So I wonder if he's... I think injury makes more sense. Recurring injury makes more sense. But I don't know about brain dead.
I think depression makes a lot of sense. Whenever someone suffers a head trauma, especially fighters, it's pretty common in the fight. They have all sorts of chemical imbalance. A lot of bad things can happen emotionally to people with head trauma. So if he had a stroke, it's very likely that confusion brings on depression, and that could have led to stress.
So that's possible, but it's odd that his wife is leaving him in the hospital. Even if he's like, you know what, I'm fine. I just need to recover and get through this. Take the kids and go do the trip or the thing that you wanted to do anyway, like trying to be the good dad type of thing. It's still fucked up that as the wife you'd be like, okay, good luck, and fuck off to Canada. Like, you should say, no, our place is here by your side. Me and the kids will be either close by at home, or I don't know if he's close to home where he's hospitalized, or he's somewhere else, or we'll get a hotel and we'll stay there, and then I'll be visiting on a regular basis, and, we'll figure something out. But or I'll take the kids to Canada, drop them off with my family or whatever, and then I'll be back to be by your side again. Not kind of leave, and it doesn't necessarily look like she's going to be back. So the whole thing's odd, and we already know he's medically a train wreck. He never should have won, and there's more voting morons in Pennsylvania that thought this big half-brain dead dummy could be a candidate for anything. I mean, you want a stroke victim who can't function as a normal human being anymore, representing your state and signing bills and being on the floor with everybody else arguing a point. Like, that's how dumb the left are. In how just anti any prosperity or any positive actions taking. If you just say that you're for the left wing nut job Democratic talking point, they'll vote you in. You can be brain dead. You can have no arms and no legs. You can have no fucking head. You could just be a corpse walking around holding a sign. And they're going to vote you in because you push their narrative, and it doesn't matter how fucked up you are, how compromised you are. They're just going to put you in by default. If you say I love trannies, you're a top contender on the Democratic ticket. And I hate that we have to share the country with these people. I hate these people, and it fucks up the country for the rest of us. It makes our lives more difficult. I said in a previous show about the LGBTQ kind of rail that they follow. And originally it was just the gays and lesbians, and they just wanted freedom, and they wanted to be able to get married like the rest of us and be able to be with a partner in a hospital or purchase a home with them just like the rest of us. And then you were told, well, how does it affect you? How does any of this have anything to do with you? Just be okay with it and let it happen. And then when it's done, we're all going to go in. We're going to walk into the sunset, and we're going to go live our lives. And now it's turned into drag queen story hours, teachers trying to trans your kids. These radical left-wing groups pushing this cult and this mental illness onto your children, so that they're cutting pieces of them off in order to become some other type of freak in their cult. And this is how these things affect you. And this is when you sit idly by and you go what most of us conservatives do, which is, I just want to live my life. I just want to pay my bills and work on my house or the land that I have in my house, and I just want to be left alone. That's all we really want, right? We just want to be able to make money and raise our family and be left alone. And these mentally ill left-wingers, they don't want that. You won't be left alone. They will indoctrinate you into this. You will be accepting of it, or you'll be attacked, or you'll face consequences because you're not accepting of all of this. And this is what happens when you sit by and you allow these things to happen. This is why I got tired of not having a voice in all this and not being able to fight back in some way, shape, or form of all this. This is the reason I started the show. The Relief Valve podcast was to fight back against the culture wars and fight back against the cancel culture war, because more voices need to be out there, and more people need to know you're not alone. Your feelings aren't wrong. If you don't like the Freakos, that's okay. If they call you transphobic, okay, so the fuck what? I have a problem with trannies. I'm transphobic. And they try to put it on you like it's illegal, like it's this bad brand. Like I'm also against pedophiles. I'm pedophile phobic, or whatever. I don't like freaks who fall in love and go after young children. Is that bad? The left would like it to be bad. They try to change the name and change the label of it and call them MAPS, minor attracted people, who just can't help them. Love is love. When you see those assholes on the side of the road and their fucking stupid houses have that sign that says love and love is love, a pedophile group in California was putting that on utility poles and different places around the city, and like Los Angeles or something, where it said love is love, and it was a group of pedophiles that were doing it. So these morons who have that outside of their house, their stupid sign that says love and love is love, whether the morons realize it or not, they're advocating for pedophilia. So it's okay to hate pedophiles, at least currently, while the left is still trying to fight back against that. It's okay to hate pedophiles, but not okay to hate trannies. Why? How does that make any sense? The other one is another freako who's trying to indoctrinate your kids, who's trying to put on a dress and dance in front of children. That's basically a pedophile in a dress. So don't think you're alone. Don't think your thoughts are wrong. And don't think that what you believe in and feel strongly about is wrong. It's not. It's okay to have those feelings. And it's okay to have a problem with these things. It's okay to be a patriot that loves your country. It's okay to be white. We're having this, building up to this race war again. There's a whole bunch of videos I haven't even gotten into where these left-wing black people are doing another "Hey, white people" type video. Like, what was it? It was, what do you think white people excel at? And they're laughing, and they're stealing our land, stealing our rights, claiming everything that we do is their own, and just more of this fucking bullshit too. So in Detransition Awareness Day, I want to get into this story on the day that it happens. So it's March 10th, or at least however close it is to my show when I do it. But this is 1315 10th Street in Sacramento, California, west side of the Capitol Park on L Street. This is organized by Our Duty, a nonpartisan group of parents and allies. And this is for all the people that have been harmed by transitioning and going transgender, and how it's affect them mentally, and how it's affect them physically by whatever parts they've had cut off or manipulated by a doctor in order to become trans. So I'm really happy that this Detransition Day is happening, Awareness Day. People are fighting back against this, and they're coming together to support others that have gone through this and help bring them back to normal society. So I want to cover this on, if I don't have a show, what is the 10th? If I don't have a show on the 10th, then I will do it. It's Friday the 10th. So on Friday's show next week, we'll be covering the Detransition Awareness Day event in California. Hell of a place to do it too, since it's California is such a heavily LGBT2 QRS TUV WXY and Z area. So I'm glad they're doing that. So we'll be covering that next Friday. So we'll see you on Monday for some of the other things I couldn't get to. Biden doing another gaffe to say, I might be a white boy, but I'm not stupid at a Black History Month event. And the Supreme Court fighting back here against the illegality of Dementia Joe giving away student loan handouts to a bunch of people who are trying to get their fucking gender studies degrees, and they expect the American taxpayer to pay for it. So we'll get into that Monday. All right, thanks for everyone for tuning into the show, and thanks to our sponsors. So we've got Buzzsprout, and we've got Keith at I Love What I Do Media. Our sponsors are in the show on Buzzsprout.com, Relief Valve Podcast. And you see the name of the show here. And Keith, I Love What I Do Media, he helps with the graphics, creating some of the things you see here that I'm using. And he's got more stuff that I still have to integrate, but I might do it over my vacation in April when I've really got time to make some more changes to the show. But in the meantime, I'm just trying to keep rolling here and getting it going. We're on YouTube and Rumble. And we're also audio streaming on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. I have to fix Spotify. and all the other major brands. You can find it on there. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, comment. You can reach the show at reliefvalvepodcast@aol.com. And if you're willing to donate, because I pay out of pocket for all of the expenses with the show, for uploading the audio portions to anything else that I do for it, if you're interested in donating to the show, I currently have the PayPal set up. You can find it on the YouTube stream, maybe the Rumble stream as well. But and you can also find it on support this show on any of the audio portions as well. So if you enjoyed the show, you want to see more, and you want to keep following, consider supporting the show as well. All right, so let's get through this Friday. Get through whatever craziness happens over the weekend, or if nuclear war starts over the weekend. And I'll see you Monday for the weekend roundup of whatever craziness happens then. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, being a supporter of the show, and hope to gain more and keep on trucking.